Among the first Americans to feel the effects of the last trade war with China were farmers.
So CBS News Money Watch correspondent Kelly O'Grady tells us they are preparing for the worst.
How long has your family been in the farming industry?
My grandfather bought this farm in the 1920s.
Kenneth Hartman Jr. is a fifth-generation farmer from Waterloo, Illinois.
Definitely wet.
His family operation produces corn, soybean, and wheat. It's a sector already under pressure.
The economics of agriculture the last 3 years has been really challenging anyway, with all the inflation that's happened.
Add on the complication of tariffs, a pain Hartman knows all too well. When the first Trump administration imposed import taxes on China in 2018, Beijing retaliated by targeting U.S. agriculture with up to 25% tariffs. The USDA estimates retaliation reduced farming exports by over $27 billion, nearly all from China.
What impact did you see on your farm personally?
Corn market dropped 50, 60 cents over that period of time. The soybean market dropped even more than that. So the president did come through and help us with some supplement as far as during that period of time. But it's still, farmers want markets.
Trade, not aid, right?
Exactly.
While China's latest round of retaliatory actions does not target agriculture, Hartman is concerned what an expanding trade war could bring. China is a critical market for U.S. soybean and corn, making it a vulnerable target. The National Corn Growers Association estimates retaliation could mean as much as a $5 to $8 billion annual loss for those industries, depending on the extent and length.
Do you think that some farmers might go out of business?
There's already farmers going out of business because the last 3 years the economy has been so terrible.
You're a supporter of President Trump. How are you thinking about that dynamic of something that could potentially hurt your business in the short term, but also that broader America First mindset?
Trump's a negotiator. Rural America helped elect him. And I think he understands that. Hopefully he can do some negotiations to get some things that we can get some markets overseas. When you talk about making America great, we want him to help make corn growers great again. So that's our opinion there.
And Kelly O'Grady joins us now. Kelly, Mr. Hartman said that he hoped these tariffs would open up markets. How did that go last time around?
Well, to some extent, it worked. So coming out of that initial trade war, China agreed to a historic trade deal. It was called Phase 1. And they agreed to not only buy 2017 levels of agriculture exports, but increase it by $30 billion over a couple of years. The thing is, they didn't fully live up to that commitment. It started off strong, but then it started to fizzle out for a number of dynamics. COVID may have been one of them. But I will also note that those initial pain of tariffs, the government had to step in and give these farmers $28 billion in aid. So it actually kind of offset some of that tariff revenue. So
what if this thing drags on? What's Mr. Hartman expect that to mean for his whole livelihood?
He is so concerned about competition, Maurice. These trade negotiations, they take time. And Brazil and Argentina, they are chomping at the bit to steal some of that market share in China from these U.S. farmers. And he told me, look, some of that business, once it is lost, you cannot get it back.
China has responded to Trump's import taxes with a 34% retaliatory tariff on all U.S. goods entering China. One industry that could be hit hard is farming, where exports account for roughly 20% of U.S. agriculture production. That number is more than doubled for products like fruits, tree nuts, wheat, and grains. I'm joined now by John Boyd. He is a farm owner and the president of the National Black Farmers Association. John, thanks a lot for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
When you hear about these Chinese tariffs, what does that say to you?
Well, it's really bad news for America's farmers. Here it is planting season right now, and farmers should be getting in the field planting corn and things of this nature. And the president announced these tariffs. Every time he says the word tariffs, the prices decline. Many Americans don't understand that farmers, we are price takers, so we don't set the markets. And many Americans say, well, why don't farmers just, raise their prices? We can't. It's dictated to us by the market. So the prices have declined for the three major commodities that are facing us right now: corn, wheat, and soybeans are all down, and farmers depend on those three commodities to hold on to our farms. So farmers right now are facing really, really trying times, and the president is going to put a lot of farmers out of business like this based on these announcements and tariffs.
And so what about subsidies? Might that help farmers out in response to the situation you described?
Cumbersome paperwork, So you're asking farmers to trade in a fair price. The first time the president was in office and he announced his tariffs against China in 2018, I was getting $16.80 a bushel for a bushel of soybeans. Mm-hmm. That price plummeted to $6. So I'm asking the president, did he really have success in his proposed tariffs on China? So they said the government is going to bail out America's farmers. That's paperwork. Farmers are time sensitive, 30 to 45 days to plant your crop, 30 to 45 days to harvest it. And the president came in and put a halt on farm loans. Many farmers don't have a farm operating loan in place. Right. He froze grants, and he's closing up the offices. The very offices that he says is going to help bail out America's farmers, he's now firing these people and closing them up around the country.
Among the businesses that'll be hurt in this trade war are toy stores.
77% of the toys sold in the United States are made in China, and they will be subject to the Trump tariffs. Nancy Chen has the toy story.
The trade war is making business at Shazam's toy store. Anything but fun and games.
How much of your store depends on imports?
Wow, over 90%.
To get ahead of tariffs, owners Joanne Ferrugia and Dean Smith dipped into their cash savings, spending $400,000, nearly double their usual budget to stockpile toys and books.
We scrambled to figure out which countries were being affected in what way. And then when we saw the list, it felt like there was nowhere to run.
What happens when you use up that stockpile?
Then we're going to be subject to these tariffs.
The U.S. is home to 3% of the world's children, but buys 38% of the world's toys. Last year, the industry was valued at $42 billion.
Consumers might look at things like toys and think, hey, is this discretionary spending? Do we really have to have it? What do you say to that?
So, as a toy store co-owner, I would say yes, because a child's work is play, and so this all matters.
With no way to absorb all the extra costs, Shazam says it will be forced to pass them on or close its doors.
It feels right now that small businesses are being abandoned. That's tragic.
And Nancy Chen joins us now. So why is it that toy stores can't absorb these costs?
Well, the profit margin for a lot of these smaller stores is already so slim that costs will likely be passed on. The Toy Association tells me that costs for these toys could go up anywhere from 35 to 54% or the full amount of the tariff.
And Nancy, remind us of the role that small business plays in, everybody hears about Wall Street, but yes, the role small business plays in the economy.
Small businesses fuel the U.S. economy. They make up 99.9% of the U.S. businesses.
Okay, Nancy Chen, thanks so much. The reality of President Trump's trade war sank in today.
And the financial markets sank with it. After yesterday's market rally, fear and uncertainty returned, sending stocks lower again.
The Dow lost 2.5%, the S&P nearly 3.5%, and the Nasdaq fell more than 4%.
It is becoming increasingly clear that this is a trade war principally between the United States and China, and both sides are digging in. It only got worse when the White House revealed the U.S. tariff on China is even higher than first announced.
The president says he is ready to talk to the Chinese, but even though they export millions of phones to the U.S., they are not ready to pick one up to call Mr. Trump. We begin tonight with Nancy Cordes at the White House. Nancy?
Maurice, the president may have imposed a 90-day pause on many of his new tariffs, but he did not pause the ones on China. In fact, he pushed them even higher. And those triple-digit tariffs are already starting to take a toll on the thousands of U.S. businesses that import goods from America's third largest trading partner.
So we're very, very happy with the way the country's running.
Today's market slide started while President Trump was meeting with his cabinet, and just after the White House clarified that its new tariff rate on most Chinese goods is now an unprecedented 145%.
I think that we'll end up working out something that's very good for both countries. I look forward to it.
But no talks are currently scheduled. For now, the tariff will get passed on almost entirely to American businesses and customers. And 73% of America's smartphones, 78% of our laptops, and 77% of our toys come from China.
China is the source of the raw materials for really the entire handbag industry.
Sarah Wells started her business designing bags for new moms 13 years ago. Today, she has 6 employees and imports tens of thousands of her bags from China each year. For her, the pain has already set in.
I was actually bringing over some goods from China, and in the midst of shipping those over here, the first 20% tariff hit, and I had to come up with the cash for that.
How much cash are we talking about?
I had to put up just over $15,000 to get my goods out of the port that I hadn't expected to have.
And that was before Trump hiked China tariffs to 145%.
At this point, it might as well be 1,000%. It's just insurmountable for small businesses. I mean, I can't do that. That exceeds the cost of the manufactured product.
What are your options if you have to pay $100,000 suddenly?
I mean, really, I'd have to lay off my staff to get the goods out of port, and then how would I run the business? So at this point, it's really halted ordering, which has a long-term effect, because even if the tariffs went away, say, in 2 weeks or 6 months, I'm going to have a huge gap in my inventory. I won't have product to sell, and I'll start losing sales. So all of this has a really ecosystem effect on my business from top to bottom.
Nancy, I talked to a small business owner who was trying to find an alternative market somewhere overseas. Is Sarah Wells trying to find somewhere else to get bags from?
Oh, absolutely. She has already flown to Cambodia to look into moving her production there. She says it's doable, but it would take, she estimates, about 3 to 6 months to get up and running. So that's a big lag time for her, which is why she wishes that the administration would have given U.S. businesses some lead time so they could adjust their supply chains. And by the way, Trump is threatening to impose a 49% tariff on Cambodia. So that is not a risk-free option either.
And Nancy, the president talks about manufacturing in the United States. Has she considered doing that herself?
Oh, absolutely. She says she'd love to produce in the United States, but she has looked, and there are simply no factories mass producing bags here in the U.S., at least not right now.
Nancy Cordes at the White House for us. Thank you, Nancy.
As we mentioned, the uncertainty of the trade war is rattling the financial markets.
I talked about that today with Austin Goolsbee, president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago and a former top economic advisor to President Obama. Tell me about the uncertainties of the current moment.
There's no way around viewing big tariffs as big as they've had in the U.S. in 100 years. They raise prices. And I'm out in the 7th district in the Midwest talking to business leaders. And what I've heard is a lot of anxiety. As one business executive in the auto industry told us, you'd be crazy to do anything right now and not wait for a few months at least to figure out where things are going to settle.
Help me understand the situation with China right now in what appears to be a trade war. Help people understand what that means for the economy.
China is our 3rd biggest trading partner. There are so many things are getting shipped. A transistor shipped from Asia to Mexico, where they put it into a capacitor that's going to go into a seat assembly, but it's not. The seat's going to get made in outside of Detroit. If every single time something in the supply chain is going to get 125% tariff applied to it, there are going to be problems.
Despite the tariff turmoil, stocks were up for the week, but consumer sentiment is down to the lowest level in nearly 3 years. One reason, according to a survey from the University of Michigan, fear of inflation is at its highest point since 1981. Nancy Chen checked back with a grocer to see how business is going.
For Stu Leonard Jr., the word import now means a whole new layer of work at its Northeast chain of grocery stores.
A lot of our cheeses are imported from France and even Italy with Reggiano Parmesan.
We spoke to the CEO 2 months ago when President Trump's first China tariffs went into effect.
It's a wild, wild west out there.
And we met him again this week to find out how his business is coping.
When we talked 2 months ago, you said at that point you were preparing for tariffs. How have those preparations gone?
Well, I think what it is you stay in, maybe not in a daily contact with your suppliers, but hourly.
Grocery prices have surged nearly 30% in the last 5 years. And Yale University researchers warned yesterday that tariffs could drive up food prices another 2.5%.
I think it's impacting the food industry overall.
As a consumer, how could my grocery shopping experience change?
You might have to switch from some foreign-made products to U.S.-made products. If brie cheese, maybe you'll go to U.S. If you're getting a Chianti from Italy, maybe you'll switch over to Washington State Red Blend.
The U.S. relies on all kinds of imported grocery items, such as produce from Mexico, pasta from Italy, and coffee from Brazil. Leonard told us he's held firm and hasn't raised prices yet.
Our job right now is to work with these suppliers, keep our prices as low as we possibly can, and help the families out that are coming into the store.
Nancy Chan, when will people start to see prices go up because of these tariffs?
That's the big question. It depends on the store, but the changes that you're going to see first likely are going to be perishable items like fruits and vegetables. I checked in with a produce importer that we've been talking to now for the past couple of months. I checked in with him this afternoon. He says those changes could be immediate. He's already starting to see price hikes. Shipments of his bananas are up more than $1,000 already. To put it in perspective, that's about $1 more per box with 15 bunches in each box.
$1,000. That's bananas.
It is. It's real. Despite the tariff turmoil, the major stock indexes today managed gains of less than 1%.
And while tariffs may hurt some small businesses, they could keep others afloat. Here's Janet Shamlian.
In Bayou Battery, Alabama, some of these shrimping trawlers haven't been out on Gulf waters in years. It hasn't made financial sense due to a flood of cheaper imported shrimp from countries like India and Ecuador.
Well, I tied it up 2 years ago because I just couldn't make ends meet anymore.
Dominic Ficarino showed us one of his sideline boats.
How has the downturn impacted your business?
I had 12 fishing vessels. Decided it was getting so tough on me, I sold 3. Tied up 3, so it put the fishing fleet of mine at 50%.
He also owns the town's biggest processing plant. When he cut back, many in the city of 2100 felt it, including Henry Barnes, who makes shrimp nets.
What have the last few years been like here?
It's been hell. Hopefully we would get some help.
Barnes is also the mayor.
I imagine I'm down to about 50% of what I was 8 years ago.
And you're probably nearing retirement age?
I'll probably have to work a half a day the day they bury me. Honestly.
Now the president's across-the-board tariffs are fueling optimism here.
I mean, just looking at how pretty they are.
Shrimpers say the taste of wild-caught shrimp is superior to farmed imports. And they're unapologetic that tariffs will likely make shrimp more expensive for Americans.
As someone who's likely to benefit from these tariffs, what would you say to Americans who won't benefit?
You can't please everybody all the time, and I don't try to. I mean, if it hurts some people in the United States, yeah, I have sympathy for them, but did they have sympathy for our industry? We've always been at the bottom rung of the ladder, and it's time for that to change.
Foreign competition is not the only issue. Hurricanes and oil spills have also taken a toll at the same time that fuel costs and supplies have risen. The shrimpers that I talked to told me that they knew dozens of other shrimpers who have just sold their boats and gotten out of the industry.
Okay, Janet Shamlian in the Gulf. Thank you. All 3 major stock indexes were down today. The tech-heavy NASDAQ took the biggest hit, dropping more than 3%. Losses accelerated after Fed Chair Jerome Powell said the Trump tariffs could trigger higher inflation and slow the economy.
Jolene Kent has the story of a woman who says those tariffs could put her out of business.
We're going to be paying whatever he tells us.
Emily Lay has built her small business, Simplified, over the last 17 years. The Pensacola company produces its planners in China for American shoppers. Stationery that's now subject to sky-high tariffs.
We don't have the same options as large businesses. We don't have the same capital or ability to pivot.
It's our declaration of economic independence.
After President Trump raised tariffs on China, eventually totaling 145%, Lei took action. She filed this lawsuit against his administration, alleging he used his emergency powers illegally to enact the fees.
If this is the end of my American dream, I'm going to go down swinging.
President Trump has said, short-term pain for long-term gain. What's your response to that?
We can't survive the short-term pain.
Lei is facing up to $1 million in tariff payments this year alone, while the White House is offering exemptions to multi-billion-dollar industries that produce smartphones and other electronics. To maintain a profit on her $64 planners, she would have to double the sticker price.
When you take our hard costs and add $18 to them
in tariffs,
you're looking at a $30 hard cost. Multiply that times 4 to get to what we should charge the customer. It's $120
for a planner.
I'm not paying $120 for a planner.
In response to Lei's lawsuit, a White House spokesperson told CBS News President Trump has broad authority to impose tariffs to address issues of national emergency and looks forward to victory in court.
Can your business survive this?
No, and that's what's terrifying. I really think small businesses are going to be the casualty of this trade war.
And Jolene Kent joins us now from Los Angeles. So Jolene, is Lei going to be able to keep her workers under these conditions?
Great question. Emily Lei employs 8 other women and says she's being forced to look at reducing their salaries and possibly eliminating positions, something she really does not want to be doing. But it comes down to how to keep prices manageable for their customers while balancing this huge new tariff burden on her bottom line.
So, Jolene, what about an alternative, say, looking for a production in the United States? Keep those employees, make it in America.
Yeah, we asked her about this, and she said she tried making the early editions of her planner here in the U.S., but to get the quality and the supplies and the efficiency, it doesn't exist here. So she actually moved her manufacturing to China years ago, and she used this cul-de-sac analogy, telling us that the pieces of the planner are made in different factories in Shenzhen, China, but they're located close to one another, making that assembly and final product more affordable.